The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my tickets!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Take two. Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show continues to be The West Wing, Season 4, brought to you by the good people at Aaron Sorkin and NBC. I am joined tonight by my brother from another mother. They call him Chesty Starcher, Juicy J. What was your nickname on the Metal Hammer of Doom most recently? Was it like Starchy Pillow Bottom or something like that?
I cannot remember what it was now. Dang it. Oh my goodness.
It was something like quasi-sexual but also adorable.
Right. I cannot remember something to do with starcher or starchy, something like that. But
yeah.
I'll have to go back and listen to the episode. Remember how I was insulted. I can't remember.
Okay. Well, we're gonna insulted. We were reading the name that you chose for yourself.
No. Okay. All right. Fine.
Okay. Starchy Pillow Bottom.
I'll go with yeah. Let me go ahead and change my name right now.
Thank you. All right. And coming us from the 51st state, the governor of Canada. These are for you, McNulty. Andrew Graham. How do you do, sir?
Well, apparently someone's in the mood to fuck a boot and find out. So there we go. Actually, I need to go throw that up on my background now.
What are you doing to shoes? What's wrong with you over there?
I will have to update my background in a second because I actually have something just for this occasion, but I'm doing good. I'm very happy to be talking about a John Wells show that is neither caught in a massive lawsuit right now, nor can never be released on DVD just for the amount of Nickelback it played.
Don't you normally have like the Welsh flag or some shit behind you?
Well, no, for most of the time I actually had a, because I'm just sitting on the other side of my basement. I actually had a, of course, now I can't remember, Alex Ross, Guardians of the Galaxy on that side of the wall. And then I realized that some of the wall was broken, so I didn't want to show that off. So now I'm just sitting on the other side of my basement where I've got Bruce behind me. And at one point I did have the Scottish flag.
The Scottish flag, that's
which
okay.
I kind of have tonight because I'm wearing a reverse Scottish flag because this one's from Nova Scotia. So
okay. I didn't realize you were sitting in your basement when we did these. I just assumed you were in your living room.
Oh no, this is my basement.
You have basements in Canada?
Oh yeah, we definitely have basements in Canada. Dude, you've liked enough photos from like my training sessions that you've seen actually the floor of my basement.
I don't know where you are. I assume you're at the gym. So
you also got to remember, I'm doing that like 4:30 a.m. my time.
That's also fair. I was talking to somebody recently, and we were trying. I might have been Dorian, as a matter of fact. He was trying to get me to meet yet another one of his babes, and like we're setting up a meeting time, and I go, okay, because I have a lot to do that day, I have to book out my time like if I was at work. So I'm like, we have a meeting time. It is 7:00, and then I go, he's in a different time zone. I better warn him it's Eastern Standard because if he shows up 7:00 Central, we will have missed the meeting. Anyway, so Andrew, sticking with you for a moment, you were absent from the last show, which meant Dorian got to talk a lot more. What the hell is that behind you now?
It's our Gadsden flag. It's fuck a boot and find out.
Terrific.
Nice.
Now I want to see whatever species of bird that is versus the bald eagle.
Actually, okay, so oddly enough, when some of this shit started a little while ago, and I'm going to be honest, I have to be careful about what I say right now because there's actually a concern that you can get flagged at the border, and it's happened to people, so I have to be careful. So around thing, I'll see if I can find it later. But
Are you idiots dabbling in your own syrupy style of fascism?
no, we're not. But anyway, so oddly enough, there were when some of this stuff started to happen around like the Four Nations face off. There was a photographer that released of basically a Canadian goose fighting and beating a bald eagle in the middle of a fight, and it then became a meme in all of Canada.
That's awesome. All right. You were not here last month, so like I said, Dorian got to talk a lot more. We had a really good conversation about season 3, and as always, you were like live tweeting during that podcast, but you kept notes. There was some stuff that you wanted to share, so let's play catch up and mustard before we move into season 4. Andrew Graham, what would you like to share with the class?
I don't know if I'll share a whole lot more because I think you guys covered a lot of it. I'll probably react to a little bit of some of the comments you guys had over kind of the structure of the season where I kind of like season 3. I'll be perfectly honest. I think 3 and 4 are probably among my favorites and probably among the strongest that the season has.
I'm going to tell you right now, I like season 4 better than season 3.
That's totally fair. Season 4 is fire,
Yeah.
But especially towards the end of it, which I'm sure Jesse's probably still recovering from the trauma of. But anyway,
Just
you were saying, "Oh, I'm on the second to last episode. I feel so bad for Toby." Dude, you have no idea what's coming up.
Right, dude. Right.
Anyway, I actually liked the season quite a bit. I think we started to get deeper dives into a lot of the characters. So, that's when we get the start of the election. That's when we get, we go through the whole arc of the investigation, which I know you had some criticisms about. I think it made sense because particularly when you think about where the show was being produced, you just come off the Clinton investigation. So I think they decided to do like a miniaturized version of, hey, here's how these investigations work.
Let me tell you how watching season 4. So Bill Clinton was elected. I'm going to come back to you, but please allow me this sidebar. Bill Clinton was elected, I believe, in 92. It was Bush the first, had lost re-election. Bill Clinton was elected for his first term. So that's 92. I'm in 10th grade in high school. So I will. That is my president from 1992 to 2000 when Bush II is elected. So from 92 to 2000, it's half of high school, all of college. My first 2 years post college before I'm going to go to grad school and become a social worker and ruin my life. No, I'm just kidding. Only a little bit. But anyway, yeah. So a lot of my political memory is the Clinton administration. And when you think of the Clinton administration, you think the Monica Lewinsky stuff, but I also remember Monica missiles. I remember the Gingrich Congress, which this season kind of gets into. I don't remember if it's Bill Clinton's second term or if it's the midterms of his second term where he has to deal with the fact he actually made a speech to America. It might have been a State of the Union. He was like, well, they would clearly sent us a message. They'd like us both parties to work together, which this season deals with. I'm going to throw it back to you because I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself. But this was the season that mostly triggered a lot of my Clinton memories.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was very much, I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make, is I was very much aware because I'm in high school and I'm politically aware. We're talking a lot about this at the table. I'm cognizant of what's happening in the world. I'm not just a child who's completely self-centered, as all children are, and rightly so. I'm aware of the outside world in a way that I hadn't been before, and it's during his administration. So for like millennials, that might be Obama. For me, it was Clinton.
Probably the same for me too.
Mm-hmm. So back to what you were saying about before I so rudely cut you off and went into a tangent about my loving memories of my avatar, Bill Clinton.
Okay, it's a little creepy that Bill Clinton's your avatar, but anyway.
I was talking to my kids about the other night, and I was just like, this fat ass cheeseburger eating, sex having, cigar smoking guy. My kids are just like, oh, you if you were a politician. I'm like, yes, you got it.
I have the worst joke right now. I'm not gonna say it though, I swear to God. I'm gonna put that one in the private chat for later. Anyway, okay, so but going back to season 3, so I think when you look at the major arcs, so you've got the investigation, that's interesting, but it wraps up. Brodigan's dead on that one. We'll get to season 5 soon enough.
If you acknowledge it, you have to read it.
Okay, season 5 falls off, but once the presidential race starts in season 6, it's solid to the end. I would totally agree with that. Season 5, I'll talk a little bit about that in relation to season 4, but that's right. We're going to focus on season 3 for right now. Okay, so investigation done. We start to get into the early elements of starting towards the election. A lot of that gets into a lot of the, getting more inside Josiah Bartlet's head. A lot of that being done by Toby, for better or for worse. And I think that's really some of the interesting stuff. I think you guys read some of my notes. This is where we start to see a lot of Toby's kind of self-righteous streak. And I think you guys talked about that on the last one. I think the other side of this is that you start to get some of those episodes mid-season 3 are things that get resolved during the election here, where we get into the whole two Bartlets. What is this guy going to be? Is he going to be folksy? Is he going to be authentically this political powerhouse?
Mm-hmm.
Those sorts of things, and again, kind of the other top end of that arc is getting the Shareef stuff. It was kind of their way of kind of dealing with terrorism at large without necessarily bringing in a version of 9/11 into their world.
Right.
And that one, it's kind of interesting because it's almost it's kind of unintentional foreshadowing, because I'm assuming a lot of conversations similar to that happened during the Obama years when they started ramping up drone strikes.
Yes.
Because it's kind of got that similar level. So again, it gets into that weight of the presidency, those moral arguments and things like that. We never got to talk about the great, I think it was either We Killed Yamamoto or one of those ones around it, where Fitz and Leo just have that epic conversation in the Situation Room where they're trying to just hash this thing out. Mm-hmm. But, season 3 is really epic. I mean, that thing just basically, again, the back half of that season and even the front half of that season, when you look at Leo's arc and things like that, that entire season just cooks. It's really good back to front.
I like season 4. We'll transition into this now. I like season 4 because it's a little bit more focused.
Yep,
also, and I think Jesse knows this about me from our David Simon run, there's a part of me that would torture Jesse. There's a part of me that would torture Jesse with certain kinds of television. And it would just
you stopped right at the right point.
I did that same bit with Alexis on Monday. There's a part of it beats up.
I feel like we're about to be made to read a survey.
Yeah. Jesse, would you ever give up all of you and just be a slave? So anyway, there's a part of me that would love to torture Jesse with like strictly political shows, because I am a complicated man. There's a part of me that really, really enjoys the wonkiness of politics and lawmaking, like the real wonkiness, like a lot of the stuff. So Josh is like my favorite character on the show, not because his character is awesome, but he gets to deal in the stuff that I care about, like the nuts and bolts of writing the law. Like every scene that deals with him fighting with someone about what to put in or take out of certain legislation is me with my pants off. I'm like, yeah, this is my stuff. This is what I like. And at the point that I'm trying to get at, and I'll let Jesse kind of jump in here as I adjust my sound again. There's more of that this season than not. It kind of got away from it in season 3. Season 4, we're back to. I mean, season 3 they were dealing with the president's MS investigation. There was other stuff that they were dealing with, and we kind of got away from strict lawmaking in the show and the drama that surrounds that, which may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it's why I like the show. And season 4, that comes back a lot. There's a lot of fights over trying to get certain legislation passed, get certain agendas dealt with. And I like it. I like the show better, Jesse, when it leans more on that than not.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair. I found myself, season 4 really gravitating more towards the emotional parts of the people that are.
You like the soapy elements.
I do. I think that, learning more about these characters and, their backstory and some of the trauma that they've experienced, it seems to make this more appealing to me. And we're in season 4 here. I know that it's not a secret. I definitely am someone who really isn't into political drama in any way, but this it seems like they're doing a fine job, at least these 4 seasons. Aaron Sorkin and this cast is making me at least interested into what's going to happen here. So but yeah, I mean, we learn so much about these people that are in this situation, in this high level of government, but they're human beings. And I think that's what really grounds this series and kept me interested, all the way through this. I've enjoyed everything that I've watched so far. And we'll talk about some of the characters and their arcs this season, but I feel like I've learned so much more and cared more about these characters. So yeah, my pants aren't coming off when they're talking about, actually, my head is spinning sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I've ever said this, but sometimes it's hard for me to keep track of what's going on because it seems like there's a lot that's unsaid and expected of the person that's watching it to understand, or I missed something, which is very, very likely.
It's like science fiction minus the science.
Okay.
And so, okay, but then it's just fiction. No.
Yeah. That's where I was going.
take the science out and replace it with politics.
Okay.
It is political fiction in the way that science fiction is science fiction, where if you've ever heard of any of the behind the scenes stuff from Star Trek, they have like consulting engineers and scientists on the show. And so during the script writing process, they'll write, and Captain Kirk walks into engineering and he says, Scotty, but you don't understand. The Klingons are on our tail. Did you fix the? And then they write gobbledygook. And then
I can't give it any more, Captain.
I've given it all the gobbledygook she's got. And then they have to have a consulting scientist or engineer write in the gobbledygook, and that becomes part of the script.
There's irreversible polarity.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of political gobbledygook in the show, but it's one of those things where you ever have a girl say to me, Jesse, you're so handsome, Jesse, I love you. Read me poetry, Jesse. And you read her poetry. She just looks at you doe-eyed. That's kind of me. I'm the doe-eyed girl. I was like, read me political stuff. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying, but I'm so turned on right now. Go ahead.
I think it also comes down a little bit to the way that Sorkin writes. Mm-hmm. There's a really good video by Lessons from the Screenplay that talks about Sorkin and The Social Network, and they go over like the opening scene in the bar.
Yeah.
And literally the number of times where these two characters are talking past each other, across each other, and shifting topics, like that's kind of a key element of his style. So
yeah, I can see that.
I think if you're talking, I was more like just the nuts and bolts of political language maybe throwing you off. I didn't realize that maybe what was also making your head spin was the rapid fire delivery and cross talking that is common in an Aaron Sorkin screenplay.
It can be. I find myself sometimes, like last season, I was throwing the scripts into oh my goodness, okay, I think it was Notebook LM. And there would be situations where I'd be like, what was the deal with so and so? Because I didn't understand.
Were you putting it into Notebook LM and like read this back to me, but as Mongo?
Well, it would explain it to me because it seems like I had to have a translator sometimes. Now that's not every episode, and I don't think it's a situation where I was like, my gosh, I hate this show because of this. No, it's just a situation where I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not as tuned in about the political side of this as much as I am, with Toby's struggles or CJ's struggles. So there you go.
I have to say, and I'll kick it over to Andrew for comment, but I'm the exact opposite of you. As I said,
I'm getting bored.
I could give a fuck less about these people as people. Like anytime they're dealing with like their personal struggles.
Wow.
I mean, there's some of the stuff I like just because I like the actor, or the actors in the scene have a certain chemistry that's a turn on for me. But in terms of strict content, what they're saying to each other or whatever, if it's all like personal stuff or soapy drama, I'm like,
Wow.
I'm just not interested. Like, I'm not watching it for that reason. If I want that, I'll go back and watch episodes of Melrose Place.
What a weird dichotomy we are. Like you are, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
both halves of us come together to watch this show, and we become
No,
Andrew.
but that's why I like doing this. Believe me, if I didn't like doing this, we wouldn't be here. But that's why I like it. I like the different approaches to the show, because if we were all saying the same thing, we'd be the MCU's bleeding edge. Hey, Andrew. Welcome to Shots Fired. Just like, fuck you, I'm on that show.
Yeah, I'm probably going back next month. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, have fun with that. So your thoughts here on anything that we're talking about, and then we'll move into some more specific topics.
I think maybe what we'll take it right towards is maybe the comment you said about talking about Josh, because I think this season's really interesting in terms of accelerating Josh as a character, because I think, he had some great episodes, like he had, the whole arc with him dealing with PTSD and things like that. But I think with this, some of these episodes, I want to say it's Guns Not Butter in particular, we start to get into the head of that character and what kind of drives that guy from to be the kind of purely political animal that he is, the operative that he loves to be.
Yeah.
And again, this is kind of the part of defining that arc that really does, again, start to take him down 2 and 3 seasons down the line. And actually, I'll probably say this, reacting again to John's comment, Josh has probably got some of the better parts in season 5 as well. So once we get there, but
I know I said in the preamble before the show, I said, hey, we have to deal with Bartlet's re-election, and we have to deal with the 2 foreign issues, and then the conclusion. I didn't say it at the time because it didn't occur to me until we started the show. And it's the first thing I want to talk about. We have a cast change this season that's very important, and it needs to be dealt with. So they wrote Rob Lowe out of the show. I was reading part of the reason why they wrote Rob Lowe out of the show is he didn't want to come back. He didn't want to keep doing the show. He didn't like he didn't like the direction his character was going in. So the way they did that was, and I thought it was an interesting thing, and I'm curious to get your take on it, Andrew, as somewhat more, of a political animal than Jesse is, if this touched you at all. The idea of no district is meaningless. And that's my way of getting to like how we do the swap. So they introduce, I think it's Joshua Molina's character, and he is managing a campaign for a district where the candidate is dead.
He died.
And then they're like, why would you do this? why are you
They nominated a guy who had 4 heart attacks?
Yeah. And so there's a whole conversation that I really like, actually. It was, we're not going to win that district. Why are you even trying? He was like, because every district matters. Every district should count. And in the sense that I have seen districts that are traditionally red or traditionally blue change depending on, look, I don't want to talk about them as people or as the office that they held. I want to talk to them as running for an office. Reagan, Obama, and Trump, and I think to a large degree Clinton, turned districts that had traditionally gone one way. And, I think I want to say Bush's second term. I'll never forget Jon Stewart's reaction to that. That was one where George W. Bush turned a bunch of districts, and he was just like, they won the presidency, they won Congress, they won the Israeli Knesset. Like there were years where one party won stuff they should have never have won. When they won in a landslide, they turned districts that had traditionally been solidly the other color. And so his whole thing is just like, no, they don't. This idea of only put money in places that are on the fence or that matter is ridiculous. Speak to the whole country, not just the part you think will vote for you. And I think that's a really important message. But that's what gets, going back to the narrative, that's what gets Rob Lowe caught up in that, because he goes out there to deal with that, and he makes a promise. He ends up having to run in that district, and that's how they write him off the show. And then they swap, and then Joshua Molina ends up going to help Toby write the inaugural address. And then, because he does such a good job with that, and he melts so well with the team, that they offer him a full-time deputy communications director role. They offer him Rob Lowe's character's
position.
Job. Yeah. And I'll only say this. I miss Rob Lowe. I'm not going to lie. I miss Rob Lowe. I thought he was a great part of the cast. I thought he was an integral part of the cast. the guy replacing him is a great actor, and I think he's a funny character, but he's not. He's no Rob Lowe. But sticking with nice things instead of negative things, I think he does have a couple of really funny interactions. Like his stuff with Toby, you think he's going to be a bit of a fop and a pushover, and he gets right in Toby's face.
Yes,
he does it in the nerdiest way possible.
Right.
And then because he is very much like knows his place. When they go tell him to go meet the president, he's like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
That's the whole gag of like people getting the yips whenever you have to meet the president. Like, I mean,
it was more than that with him. It wasn't an Ainsley.
Oh yeah.
It was very much more of a I'm not supposed to meet the president now, so I don't want to.
Yeah.
Not I want to meet the president and suddenly I'm peeing my pants because this is the president. It's a different animal. But his interactions with his angels, as I called them in my head, all the interns because the speech writing staff quits, so he has the interns writing for him, and there's all these young girls who kind of have a clue what's going on, but not really. His interactions with them and his sister are hysterical. So
yes,
I'll go to you about the Rob Lowe stuff and anything else you want to comment on with the new character.
I'll probably say, I really like Josh Malina. I think Will's a great ad. I don't know if I loved, and I think this even came up on the West Wing Weekly when they did the review, which actually was hosted by Josh Malina. I don't know if the whole writing off of Rob Lowe totally hung together. Because the whole thing was set up was you'll run in this district. If you win, you're in Congress. If you don't, you'll come back and you'll be a senior advisor. And then he loses, and then he goes to Mandyland.
Right.
Like he doesn't actually exit. He just has kind of a moment where he's sat in the bar and goes away. Leads to say, I mean, it's also kind of interesting on where they were writing that character as well, because they were planting the seeds and I want to say it was 20 Hours in America Part 2 where he had to staff the president. And then I can't remember Leo's daughter's name. Mallory shows up at the end, and he's kind of talking with her about the day, and he's like, I had one good moment today, but it was great, and I got to be back in the room. Yeah. And he sees where he wants to go in his career and things like this. So there's an arc there for that character that again didn't quite hook in. The other side of it is that when I rewatched the 2 episodes dealing directly with that special election, it kind of turns into comedy of errors, and it's kind of like, they're kind of almost beating the character with a fish a little bit. So it's not my favorite part of the season. I'd say probably those 2 episodes are low points for me. I mean, again, there's good points for Sam in it. We will see Sam come back at one point. Probably the other thing I should say right now, just to let you guys know, is that they actually had another option for our character to come in and kind of replace Rob Lowe's character on the cast. And you have to promise both of you guys promise me you keep your pants on when I say this name. It would have been Ainsley Hayes.
Oh, look out!
I was hoping you were going to say Tom Cruise.
No, but the problem is that Emily Proctor actually accepted a role on CSI Miami at that point. Otherwise, it was basically, I think the story I heard was that it was in a couple of days too late of calling her to say, "Hey, we want you to be a full-time cast member."
Oh wow.
I'm just missing her too. I got to be honest. I was thinking about characters who had disappeared this season, and she was gone for I think the entirety of it. They kept Mary Louise Parker, and Mary Louise Parker ends up in a later episode after Stucker Chang's character, the First Lady, talks to Josh about why she didn't get a certain amount of funding. It's a great conversation, and I hate to be all over the place. I want Jesse to address the Rob Lowe thing, but it's one of my favorite. It's a great Josh moment. Because I wouldn't describe Josh as awkward or autistic sounding at times. It's more of manly to the point of not particularly caring if your feelings are hurt, but in an intelligent way. And Stocker Channing is I'm the First Lady and I want this funding for this thing that I believe in, and he ends up maneuvering around it, and it goes in a different direction. And so she goes to talk to him, and she basically was just like, "How'd you beat me? Show me your secrets, magician." And he talks about, you need a chief of staff. I have a chief of staff. I have people I can delegate to who are strong enough to maneuver these things. And then he says something to the effect of, "You got beat. It happens. Get a better team and you won't get beat so much." And she says something to the effect how do you feel like you can talk to me that way? And his answer to her is essentially, he was like, "Because I won. That's why."
I won.
And
Right.
he's, and something along the lines of looking across the ring at the victor who's dancing.
Yep.
And I was like, gosh, where are all the, now I'm one of the girls on TikTok, where are all the men who say that kind of thing these days? It was a great bit, and a great bit of writing and a great bit of acting on the part of those two. And credit where credit's due, they also wrote Dr. Channing really well on that scene, because they didn't have to write her as taking her lumps and walking out defeated and just willing to try harder next time with a different strategy. But that's exactly what they did do. And gosh, I miss that kind of writing, Jesse. I miss that kind of writing.
I hear you. Yeah, as far as Rob Lowe goes, I wasn't aware that this was going to be his last season until I think I hopped on the internet after the final episode, and I realized that we're losing Sorkin and Lowe's getting written off. So I thought at some point he was going to come back, and I had no idea. I thought the storyline with his character was interesting this season, with him actually having to go and run that race and watching as, I think they're in the process of celebrating the inauguration, I believe, and they're watching the elections happen, and he ends up watching them win, and he's like, oh my gosh, I made a promise. And he has to go and tell the president that, I've got something I've got to do, which is a great interaction, because what's happening at that moment is that the president just wants to get laid, and he everybody keeps walking in and bothering him. But anyway, so what was his name again? I had it here. Josh Molina. Quirky, kind of, his replacement here, Will Bailey. You got the sense that he was, he was very good at what he did. And you could tell that Sam really respected and understood that, man, this guy is good. And the fun way that they end up meeting, Will and Toby end up sitting down with each other, both of them, like, you want a job here? He's like, no, I was told you wanted to see me. And they, kind of, their relationship kind of builds from there. But so you said Rob Lowe will be coming back at some point later on down the line. I mean, just cameo, and I'm assuming
we'll be seeing him a little bit, but it's also kind of interesting. Like, I mean, I think about that introduction of Will in that episode, because it was the debate episode, and I always think about that scene at the end of the bar where Sam's in the bar with Will and his team, and he's trying to get him out of there, and Will convinces him, and Rob Lowe still takes that, or Sam still takes that minute to go thank all of his team members, make them feel valued, even though he knows that this, or he thinks that this thing's not going to happen.
Right.
So let's talk about, speaking of the election victory, President Bartlet. He is running for re-election. He has put the MS stuff behind him. We have a Republican nominee. He is the Democrat nominee, and it is full bore to November's election day. And the stuff that I really want to focus on is the prep and then the debate. There's a couple of episodes that just deal with that alone.
Yep.
How many debates? What kind of debate is a particular politician who was supposed to throw their weight behind Bartlet going to enter the race and be a part of the debate or such thing? I just want to touch on this very, very, very briefly, because it's its own topic, it's its own podcast, it's its own podcast series, it's its own Netflix series. But we're going to spend 10 seconds on it, Andrew. And that is the idea of political math, and how, if I'm running and you're running, the difference maker is Jesse runs too. And Jesse can't win, but he peels votes off of you.
Yep.
And I wasn't gonna win. I was losing 49-51, but now I'm winning 49-47.
You were hitting me at like the best time possible, both the best and worst time to answer this question, because we're in the middle of a federal election right now where that entire thing is playing out.
Yeah,
Wow.
Because we're always a multi-party system, and basically that's exactly what's happened, only in reverse, where normally you have a split in a couple of directions, and all those people have dumped all those votes behind one candidate at the moment. I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of it, but that whole discussion around like it's funny to me because Canadian elections are always multi-party affairs. And obviously this season you get into Stackhouse coming back from the Stackhouse filibuster and those kinds of conversations. And again, we're getting into that territory, particularly around the debates and everything, around what Bartlet is going to do. Is he going to, stick to his values? Is he going to try and be congenial? Is he going to try and be this, this powerhouse? I'm trying to remember if it's this season or not, last season, where he pulls the whole hot mic thing with, Richie's a 22 caliber mine.
It was last season.
It was last season?
Oh, yeah. The light was red.
The light was red. That was a good moment too.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was thinking, in real life, this was a thing that happened. Bush the first lost to Clinton actually because of Ross Perot.
Yep.
Ross Perot pulled enough votes away from Bush that Clinton, who was not winning, could win. It is said, and in one of the closest elections of the last 50 years, Bush versus Gore, that had Ralph Nader not run. Yep. Like, there was no way he was ever going to win. He wasn't going to win a single solitary state, but he pulled just enough money and just enough votes away from Gore.
In Florida.
In Florida. So a third party candidate who has zero chance of winning could crush a candidate and their chances at election or re-election in a situation where they would have won. Another situation like that in real life was the California governor election, where 87 people ran for the governor of California, not the least of which was actor extraordinaire Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he won with 12% of the vote or some garbage like that. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
And everybody ran for governor. Jesse was there. His wife, Mindy. I ran. Robert Winfrey was running in that election. Jesus Christ. My son, who was not yet born, ran in that election. It was retarded. But yeah, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he ended up being a good enough governor that he won a real big boy election well enough under normal circumstances. But that first one, he won because he won with I think less than 20%, because 87 people were on the bill, and it's just to split the vote everywhere. Go ahead.
I was going to say, my favorite thing about Arnold getting elected was there was this line in this documentary called Enron, the Smartest Guys in the Room.
Yeah, I've seen the documentary.
Where it's like, if you told me that Enron's activities would have led to the destabilization of the market, I would have totally believed you. If you had told me it would lead to Arnold Schwarzenegger being elected governor, there's no way I would believe you.
That is the stuff of science fiction. The only thing I'm going to add, and then we can move on with this, but third-party candidates, fourth-party, other tertiary candidates also take money from your leaders. Because at the end of an election where every dollar counts and you are begging people for money, when you have crazy people out there like, hey, let's vote the communist, let's put the communist into power, and they throw their money behind him. That's money that might have gone to somebody else.
Yeah.
So these are all really important things, and it comes up in this season. That's why I'm bringing this up. They're dealing with that. Bartlet is running a tight campaign. It's a close one. They're doing their version of Jeb Bush versus Bartlet. So it's almost like a Jeb Bush versus Gore kind of a thing, or Jeb Bush versus Clinton, however you want to spin it. Bartlet changes the identity of whatever popular Democrat was going on in that part of the world, in that part of the history. But so they're doing their version of the Democrats versus Jeb Bush, and it's close. And then they have this other person who might be in the race too, and they're like, we're never going to win if he runs. This is only going to hurt us. This is how we hand an election to the Republicans. So that's stuff I thought was interesting. And I'll save this and then say this rather, and then I'll toss it over to you guys. When they're prepping for the debate and he's all thumbs and and he's trying to be congenial, he's trying to be a slave to all masters, and he's just not sounding like himself. We go back to the theme of this show practically, which is let Bartlet be Bartlet.
Yep.
I'm going to say this to you, Andrew, and this is what I want you to respond to, and then you can go into other remarks about this. we talk a lot these days, especially on this network, about boys' power fantasy. This show definitely deals in political power fantasy.
Yep.
What if our mamby-pamby, limp-wristed, tree-hugging, sissy Democrats could be the men they actually are, and just get out there and gnash teeth and roar and bite people? Arr! You know, what if we could have some real hard fighting, word throwing Democrats, and they go, well, we'll just write them that way. And there's Bartlet. And look, I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound like it's a complaint, but it's kind of not. I said, in a previous show, you're only as smart as your writers, and that works both ways.
Yep.
Because they make Bartlet so quippy and so smart, and just when we get to the actual debate and he's just tearing poor old stand-in for Jeb Bush to pieces, it's like, I haven't seen a president that smart ever. The closest may have been Barack Obama, maybe. But in all the years that I've been alive, from Reagan to now, no president, not a single one, has been that sharp, that witty, that intelligent. None of it. Closest was Barack. And I wasn't the world's biggest fan of him, so it's not like I'm standing for the guy. But he was the closest to sounding like the political boys' power fantasy that is President Bartlet. You know what I mean, Andrew?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, that's a lot of it where it gets into, I think it was in season 3 where it's like, you're heavyweight and he's not, and all those things. It's like, sometimes I think, at the expense of being congenial, you just need to go in there and be the smartest guy in the room. And I think, when you talk about it as a power fantasy, I think it becomes a little bit of like, this is going to sound weird, a smart guy's power fantasy, where you can actually go in there and be every bit as smart as you are, and people take you seriously. Like there's a degree of
people value that.
Sorry,
because people value it. Because in real life, Andrew gets up there and he's just like, all the smart Canadian things ever, and aren't I a genius? And everyone goes, boo, boo. And then I come out there and I go, boobs and tits and drugs and cigars, and everyone goes, yay! And the other guy says,
abortions for some and tiny American flags for everyone.
Right. And then Andrew just like, why am I here? Like, why am I doing this?
But it's like, I mean, it's even the reference. Like,
what is it? The guy in the Nixon administration. Oh, Spiro Agnew. This is why Spiro Agnew couldn't run for president. One, because he was named Spiro Agnew. That sounds like a vegetable. But also because he was the smartest guy in the room and nobody liked him. Well,
that, and I mean, on some level, it's also that it's that fine balance of being able to say, yeah, I'm smart and I can do all this. I think I consider the smartest people I know the people who can take really complex ideas and communicate them in a reasonably intelligent manner. And that's what Bartlet does.
Oh, you're not talking about me. Sorry.
No, you too, Mark. Don't worry. Okay. But it's like he goes out there and it's like, that's one of my problems. I do not have the gift of brevity. Okay, maybe compared to some people on this network.
Nobody on this network does. Nobody. Where our plug segments are 20 minutes long.
He goes out there, and even under these like 30-second timeline rules, he's going out there and he's just throwing hammers the entire time. And it's great. It's great to watch. And it comes down to that whole idea. Like, my handle tonight is the 10-word answer, because that's a whole debate they have.
Right.
Like, again, referencing, literally, I just watched a 4-man debate tonight because, again, that's how we do things in Canada. But it's like, we've literally been having, up until about 6 weeks ago, we were literally having political debates that literally consisted of verbing the noun. Like, literally, there was a guy who was 25 points up based on 3-word catchphrases.
Nice.
And, well, not anymore, but
okay. Just to see your point and raise it, another anecdote. When Lois Griffin is running for office and she's losing by bringing up the issues, and Brian just says, just say 9/11, and she wins because of it.
9/11.
Yeah. What are you planning to do about homelessness? 9/11. Yay!
It's kind of funny. The other one I just saw this week. I'm glad we've gone to both The Simpsons and Family Guy. I'm going to bring up Young Sheldon when he runs for student council. And then it's like, she's from New York and don't mess with Texas. And then he's the president.
Right. I'm going to take your brief moment to breathe as a moment to bring Jesse in. Your thoughts on the re-election campaign and the debate stuff this season, Jesse?
Yeah, so you guys were talking about how smart Bartlett is, and it's very noticeable, obviously, when he walks into a room and he's got like some kind of story to tell you that happened about 1 billion years ago. So and so did this and so did that. It almost gets on your nerves a little bit. Like, how can you stand to be in the room? And I think that's brought up. Like, I think Toby brings that to his attention. I think it was last season. Like, look, man, you are the smartest guy in the room, but you don't have to let everybody know it every single time. We are looked on as we could be viewed as elites, and people don't like that.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that Bartlett knows when to use it and when not to. And I think the most unrealistic thing sometimes is watching like the audience or his constituents appreciate his intelligence, because we're unfortunately, well, this day and age, that's not exactly what we do. A lot of us are not appreciating
He elected a man by a landslide whose phrase was, "I know all the best words."
Yeah. So, it's so different watching. I think that's a lot of what hits me sometimes, is watching the way things are different. This is only 20 years ago that this has happened. These ideals are being presented on television, and what's happening nowadays in our political landscape is just so vastly different. So yeah, political power fantasy. I see where you're coming from. I mean, I wish for a president like that. I think he is a great embodiment. This character is a great embodiment of what the American people should have and should want. Somebody who makes decisions with their heart and their mind.
Bill Clinton and Al Gore were a nice pair, because Al Gore really was the brainy of the two, but
right.
He was brainy in the way that you want to punch a nerd. And then Bill Clinton was no slouch either. I think that because of the Monica stuff, and it's the old Jeff Foxworthy thing of, we have doctors and lawyers and smart people in the part of the world where I'm from, but we sound like this and nobody listens. It's like, what you want to do is, no thanks, I'll just die.
Clinton was a road scholar. Like, he had.
Yeah, I was getting to that. Yeah. Go ahead.
And he was a Rhodes Scholar. He was a smart guy.
Yeah, Bill Clinton was not stupid, but Bill Clinton sounded like he was from Arkansas. But also, Bill Clinton had extremely high social intelligence, and unlike a lot of other politicians, most like our current one, there's a lot of similarities between Trump and Clinton in the sense of, boy, do both know how to make themselves appealing to the average idiot, and that is why they were elected twice.
And amazing political instincts.
Correct.
I think you go back to the whole thing, like, we talk about what happened in Pennsylvania, like his instinct to go up there and pump his fist in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is something where even people up here who are looking at that and saying, these are other people saying this who were not admirers of the current president, said that guy's got such amazing political instincts to do that in that moment and get that moment out of it.
There's a lot of comparisons between like politics and professional wrestling. And one of the things they talk about is like the nuance of knowing when to look at a crowd.
Yes.
Knowing when you got, I was listening to a TikTok where Triple H was talking about the People's Elbow, and they were like, when the Rock did the People's Elbow as a goof at a house show, and he realized that he had the people in a way that nobody else did. And that's why the People's Elbow became what it did. But that's a skill you have to have, because other people can blow past the stop sign and not see that they got something. Yep. And others know exactly when they've got it, and then they build on it, they play on it. I want to move on to, if there's nothing else, I want to move on to the stuff, also playing off of things that happened in the third season, the fallout from the, help me with this, Andrew, the Kumar assassination.
Kumar, yes. Shareef's assassination.
Yeah, so they made the decision at the end of season 3 to land the plane, I believe, in Bermuda and have U.S. military shoot him dead, and then make it look like a crash. And it's the ghost of Christmas Past this season. All that shit comes back to haunt them. They've got there's a really funny thing where the Kumaris are basically like blaming the Israelis for it. you know, and it's like, we know the truth. We know
Yeah.
it's not the Aurelis because it was us, but we can't say that. And they're having to do all of this sort of political maneuvering, and there's a debate over whether or not they broke international law, whether or not they committed a war crime. And there's a lot of talk of, we made it a very dangerous and important decision. It's one we'd make 100 out of 100 times. It was the right decision to make, as much, you know, hand wringing as there was over it. But now there's consequences, and those consequences may be that, you know, President Bartlet may be brought up on war crimes charges, and that's a very serious thing. So it peppers itself throughout a bunch of episodes, especially after the re-election stuff. So I just wanted you to get your opinion on how that was handled, Andrew.
I thought, you know, again, that's a really great part of the season. I think we get to bring, you know, Jordan back, kind of who becomes Leo's girlfriend, who's the international lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, these are great debates.
Oh my God, the scenes with him and her in the situation room are fantastic.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, I mean, Sorkin writes lawyers so well.
Yeah.
Everyone, the lawyer characters, I really, really like.
So, one sec. So, my son was watching wrestling with me as I was setting up the show tonight, and it's the way I have my desk. I have a TV next to my monitor, and he saw the graphic I have of the West Wing season 4 DVD box set. That's our graphic for tonight, and he was just like, "This looks like a billboard for a law firm." He's like, "Are they all?" This is a Tampa thing. Are they all named Morgan? I'm like, "All right, Jonas."
There's a few lawyers there, that's for sure.
There are a few lawyers there.
There are a lot of lawyers there. But, you know, it's an interesting question to bring up. And I mean, like I said, the whole Shareef assassination conversation is really kind of real world foreshadowing about some of the conversations that you would end up having during the Obama administration about the ethics and legality of drone strikes.
Right.
Because it's the same idea. It's do you wait for a general war to break out, or do you pick these guys off one at a time?
Well, then you're also then opening. Look, if you need an example of this, see the current trade war happening between China and America. But what you do to one country, they then have the green light to do back to you.
Yep.
The only thing stopping them is capacity.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Well, and we find out about capacity later in the season. So.
And that's the other thing. If you. Not to sidebar too much, I will give you back the floor. But you want to know why 9/11 happened? Because Al Qaeda didn't have nuclear missiles. And when I say that, they're like, wait, start again. They used planes as missiles because they don't have missiles. So they hijacked planes and flew them into important targets around the United States, and there would have been more of them had the world not significantly changed on that day. But the point of this is that you have the United States involved in the Middle East for 50 to 100 years at that point.
Yep.
And the Arabs, you know, figuring out new and inventive ways to strike back at America. And without the capacity of a major country, you know, with nuclear weapons or a military, they invented one. You know,
it's asymmetrical warfare.
Right. And that's why 9/11 happened the way that it did. Had they had missiles, they wouldn't have hijacked planes. So you have the situation here where, you know, we do what we do to what was the foreign administrator? He said
he was the defense minister or something like that.
Yeah. And then that opens up for this country to figure out a way to get back at us. And they're going to. Especially if they can do it in a way that there's a lot of talk and a lot of, again, hemming and hawing about, and we talked about this with the first season. I can't remember the phrase that we use, but basically
proportional response.
Thank you. Proportional response. You know, you can't they set off a car bomb and it's out of a pizzeria in Brooklyn. So we leveled their entire country with Moabs from sea to shining sea. Seems like a little overkill, you know, that kind of a thing.
Yep. And I mean, I think it's also kind of interesting because, again, when you look at us on the other side of 20 years of I think at this point, the accepted phrase is the global war on terror, where it's like, you start to realize, and a lot of my thinking about this was influenced by a book named by a writer named Max Boot called War Made New. Mm-hmm. And it's about the history of what's called irregular warfare. But he actually makes the argument, because everyone thinks that, you know, war is country A declares war on country B, they shake hands, square off, and go fight for five 5-minute rounds. But in reality, what he says, the sort of what we'll call kind of raiding, irregular warfare, sneak attacks, ambushes, things we would refer to as like guerrilla warfare, has probably been the longer term mode of warfare for most of human history. Right. So there's a real question of to what degree are we, you know, looking at warfare and the international laws that grew up over the last, we'll say 200 years. Does that still, you know, was that actually the good old days, or is that just a temporary state?
Let me talk
Sorry, I just went really, really hardcore history wonk on that.
No, you did. Yeah, actually, you reminded me of a book that I read, and I've talked about it on here before. Greek Fire, Poison Arrows, and something else, and it was about like asymmetrical war and terrorism in the days of antiquity. Literally Greek fire, like, you know, coming up with some archaic chemical, throwing it onto arrows, lighting them on fire, and, you know, setting the world ablaze, that kind of a thing. You know, we've had chemical warfare for almost as long as we've had chemicals.
Yep.
So Jesse, your thoughts on that element of the show?
Yeah, I think the thing that stuck out most to me was watching Bartlet struggle with the fact of what he's done. You know, giving the order to kill somebody. There's a moment where he is talking, I think, to Zoe, and he's just about to tell her, and he stops and he runs into Leo like shortly thereafter. He's like, I almost told her. You could tell he's struggling with it, and as well he should. And Leo's there to offer his support, which is, you know, you see that throughout this whole season. Leo, and
I got to interject there. Leo is a great Democrat because he's also a military person.
Right.
We tend to forget that you can be both. And I am reminded of the line from season 3. This is the worst part of your liberalism.
Yep.
Because Leo may be a Democrat, but he's military first.
Right.
Which I admire and I actually like, and I think, you know, is the right way to be.
And when he comes and he presents a situation to the president, it's very matter of fact. He's like, okay, he's probably already mapped out like exactly what, you know, Bartlet's going to say, and he's going to have that answer ready to go. But he's always there in a position to support the president and help him, you know, okay, the decision that you're going to make, I want you to understand that whatever you do, I'm in support of it. But here's your options, and here's what's going to happen if you don't do this. And sometimes he's gobsmacked at watching the president walk into the situation room and ask all these military men these questions that like none of them have thought of. If some of the fun stuff to watch, like, you know, he'll just go off about my goodness, I cannot remember. He was talking just random shit. People would be sitting there talking about the situation. He just starts randomly.
Oh, the gang conversation, and it ends with with the professor where it's like, it's because there's no water and it's terribly hot.
Yeah, it's just like, what is he doing? But Bartlet has to struggle with that decision. It weighs on him throughout this whole season, and you know that's the most compelling part to me. Obviously, at some point he's going to have to tell his staff, and he does. He comes out, not only, but a lot of that is because somebody's figured it out. Welcome back, Danny, by the way.
Well, it's funny, you know, you go into politics because you want to affect change. You know, you want to be part of the running of your part of the world itself. And you go into the military because you want to be a soldier, you want to be a defender, you want to be a hero. And I think that's a big part of what makes Bartlet and Leo who he is, and why they work so well together. And it makes sense to me that Bartlet struggles with the military element of his job, because it's almost like, this is not the part of the job I want.
Right.
It's the part of the job that's there, and I have to take it seriously. You know, the president is the commander in chief of the American military. There's no getting around that. That is the job. And so if you want to be, you know, you want the bully pulpit, you have to take the rifle with it. But you can see where he was like, he struggles with it. And that's where kind of Leo is there to be like, I'm going to get you through this. It's
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and Bartlet often operates, I mean, I can't remember maybe it was season 2 where it's like, the president likes smart people who disagree with him. Because there is that kind of that, you know, to evoke another American president, that kind of team of rivals approach where you have people who do disagree with him, who do bring in different perspectives. Going back even to Will for a second, like they give him, you know, quote unquote, the bad note where he's got to go into the Oval Office and tell him as much. Then it was a test. It's to say, can you tell truth to power? Can you staff your guy? Because I think in a lot of cases, when you start to see politicians fall down, it's because when they start breathing too much of their own gas.
They're surrounded by yes men.
Exactly. And you start to have staff turnover, and you start to get surrounded by people who only believe in you and aren't willing to say, hey, wait a second, sir, have you thought of this?
Right.
Just to move this on, the other side of this is the Kundun situation.
Yep.
The parallel was the genocide in Rwanda. Watch Hotel Rwanda if you want to know what the background of this is. But yeah, there was a period of time where we had, I think it was Hutus and Tutsis killing each other in Africa over who got to be the blackest, among other things. And
that was so wrong.
And then that was one of the things that Clinton had to deal with was genocide in Africa. There's a great book. Jared Diamond won a Pulitzer Prize for Guns, Germs, and Steel. It's a book I highly recommend anybody who has two brain cells to rub together and is interested in reading should read. I read it cover to cover. It's excellent. Jared Diamond then went on to write less interesting books, one of which was Collapse. And in it is an entire chapter on how Rwanda collapsed and turned into what it turned into. But I bring that up to say that there's a lot of dealing with that, and it brings up an issue that is kind of close to my heart, because as much as I can be a sort of a social progressive, I'm one of the world police people as well. Genocide is genocide, people are people. Joshua Molina is going to have a line in this show, which it was definitely one of those, again, under the umbrella of power fantasy. What if you could say whatever you wanted to say and there were no consequences? It's one of those lines.
Yep.
He said Bartlet walks into Will's office, and they're having a conversation about the foreign policy section of the speech of the inauguration. I think is what they're still working on at that point. And there's a debate over whether or not the U.S. should intercede in the genocide in Kundun, and they've been building up to it. There was a whole thing with like families like raping each other, and there's systematic executions, mass graves, the whole 9 yards. This is building and building and building. And do you, as the most powerful nation in the world with the means to do so, go to that country and fix it, stop the genocide, save the people? And the one side of the argument is we're not the world police. We have enough problems here at home. That's their problem. They are a sovereign nation. Let them fix it themselves. Not only that, but if you really want someone to intercede, there's a UN. There are other African nations. They have their own agencies. There's other places to stop this. The U.S. does not have to get involved. There's no law saying that we personally need to send troops over there. American sons and daughters to fight in a fight that's not our own. And the other argument is they're fucking people and we have guns. What other than a moral obligation is there that you need to go over there and save people? And that's the debate. I tend to fall on one side or the other, but that's not what we're here to discuss. I'm not running for anything.
Yeah, Mark, you've pulled in a guy who's probably read a lot more about the genocide in Rwanda than probably most people have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've probably told this before, but UNIMIR 1, which was the first UN Rwanda operation, was actually led by a Canadian named Romeo Dallaire.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in anything regarding this, go read his books. It's fantastic. I just finished his latest one called The Peace,
Mm-hmm.
which talks about kind of what would his approach be to how to prevent genocides in the future and things along that line, in terms of
Kill
how
all
did
the
we
people?
get there? Sorry?
Kill all the people?
No, not quite, but it's like, what are the structures and what are the behaviors that we get into that lead us to these situations? And then how do we change those structures and behaviors for it not to happen again? And shit, seriously, it wouldn't have stopped everything, but I'm pretty sure one strike package on the one airstrike on probably like the radio station in Kigali probably would have saved a couple hundred people.
The line Joshua says to Bartlett, something along the lines of, and pardon me if I fuck this up, but I think like something like, what's the difference between an American life and a Kundun life? I don't know, but there is one.
Yeah.
Bartlett asks him, why is my life worth more than a Kundunese, something along those lines?
Yeah.
And he goes, and his response is, I don't know, but it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is to say that, people across the world different from us or less valuable than the rest of us.
Yeah.
And look, that is some people's point of view, and that point of view gets them to vote one way versus another. So they end up deciding to intercede. But even in their intercession, shit takes time to move. As mobile as our military is, and would get to be later on, I talked about this. Yes, I talked about this on Monday during Warfare about John, not Ashcroft. Shit.
Ham.
John
Ham.
No, the real life person, Jesse.
V for Vendetta.
The Watchmen. Leave an extraordinary gentleman.
From hell.
Hey, nice one. There we go.
Secretary of Defense during George W. Bush's administration.
George. Well, first it was Rumsfeld, and then it was
Stephanopoulos.
No, I'm thinking of Don Rumsfeld.
Yeah. Rumsfeld.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I said this on the Warfare podcast. John Rumsfeld, part of the reason why he wanted to go into Iraq was because he could. He wanted to demonstrate the nimbleness of the modern American military. But even in the 90s, we weren't as nimble as we're going to be. But we can still get to places pretty fast. But sometimes not fast enough, and shit still happens. And so there's a bit of the show where they're talking about the Kundalini's are really amping things up. They are really pushing people into death because they got to get it done before we show up because we're coming. I thought the show handled a complex issue pretty well. I didn't necessarily get the sense they were cheerleading for anything, but they were definitely presenting both sides of the argument as good a way as they could. What do you think of that element of it, Andrew?
I think so. And I mean, again, we've talked a little bit about Clinton, and this conversation is directly part of that, because this is kind of going back and rewriting a little bit of what happened in Rwanda in '94. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think they did a good job of having that conversation. And again, that whole really stark comparison of what's the value of this citizen's life versus this person's life, or something along that line, and trying to talk about it's do we end up having, do we become the world's policeman? Do we end up being in, these forever wars and things along that line? And I mean, as we see later on, I think it's Red Haven's on fire. There's consequences to some of these activities as well. So it's not like you go in there and dust everybody off and that's it. These are complex. I mean, one of the things people don't
say, if you want an example of that, is we thought we were doing the right thing in arming the Mujahideen. Give you three guesses the Mujahideen turned into.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even and even Rwanda, I mean, they don't talk about it well now, but it's you can have a real argument that's the genocide in Rwanda happened, and a lot of the aftermath of that has basically precipitated the largest war since World War II that's been taking place in Africa for the last 25 years.
Right. By the way, Jesse, do you know who the Mujahideen turned into?
Tell me.
Al Qaeda.
Oh. Wow.
You ever hear the joke about that? Do you know why we know that Saddam Hussein? I know I'm shifting, but Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. We kept the receipts.
Oh,
remember that joke?
Oh boy.
Okay, we're going to have to watch Charlie Wilson's War at some point then.
Yes, Charlie Wilson's War is a great movie. Anyway, your thoughts on the on the fiction that we are supposed to be discussing, dealing with this particular plot line, Andrew.
Like I said, I mean, I thought, like I said, it's hard for me to separate those two things. Mm-hmm. I think it was very well handled. I think, again, it comes down to the weight of these decisions and the weight of these discussions, and the question of, the real practicality and the real humanity on the other side. And I think, again, that conversation was very well balanced.
Yeah. What'd you think of that element of the show, Jesse?
I want to talk about the end of that. Red Haven's on fire, right? Was that the episode where they finally get the prisoners back? I think that was a brilliant stroke of writing, because what ends up happening as the show goes on, there was 3 prisoners, I think there was, total of 3. And so they've got to figure out a way to rescue these guys and bring them back. And we're treated to the families of these 3 men. They're all worried about them being tortured because they've seen photographs. What's going on with them?
It is nigh on impossible to attack this country from just about anywhere in the world. However, the way people keep doing it, the way they did it in this show, kidnapping soldiers, putting them on TV,
right,
and upsetting the voters. That's how you do it.
Yeah. But what's brilliant about this is that, we are so involved in getting these three guys back. We want to, we want to bring them back, and we get to see these families. We start our hearts bleed for these families that we're watching. We've watched them one military man's mom, who's very much a Karen. She's trying to figure out, who are these people have TV? What are you talking about? Anyway, by the end of the episode, though, they get them back, but you find out that the small practice installation that they created there was attacked, and they lose 17 men. And it's just like, Leo walks in and says, yeah, we lost 17 men, but we got your three guys back. And then he kind of walks back out, and you start to realize that, look at what we sacrificed just to get these men back. We lost 17. It's almost like it's a footnote, but I think it's done on purpose. Because
I've talked about this before. According to Bob Woodward, in a meeting that he sat in, or an interview that he did when he was writing Bush at War, during one of the first meetings George W. Bush had with his national security team, and they were talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and George Bush kind of threw up his hands and said, "Why don't you just let them kill each other?" And everybody at the table, this is a table full of Republicans, all jaws hit the floor. Here's the thing. I know George W. Bush gets the rap, sometimes earned, sometimes not, of being a toaster oven. But that sentiment of why don't we just let the Israelis and the Palestinians kill each other, widely held. Lots of people feel that way. That man was speaking for the people. I just wanted to cut in with that. Go ahead, Jesse.
No, that's pretty much all I wanted to say, because I mean, I understood the parallels with Rwanda that they were kind of making here. I remember a little, hearing a little bit about that, but I think it was towards the end when we were intervening, and then those three guys.
That's where Black Panther was from?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I learned something new every day.
Okay. Quick note.
Why don't they just get the vibranium that's in Rwanda?
Oddly enough, I'm actually pretty sure, whenever they did the map of where Wakanda is, it's in the Great Lakes area. So it's tucked right in between Rwanda and the or it's carved out of a part of Rwanda and a part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Oh, wow.
So all of this leading to our conclusion for this series, which is at some point midway through the series, Zoe comes back from college and she's dating Frenchie McSurrender Monkey.
Oh boy,
Jean-Paul.
Jean-Paul.
Yes, who came straight out of Les Mis. And yes,
she's eating Surrender douche.
Yes. So she comes home and she is dating Prince Jean von Valjean, and much to the dismay of poor Charlie,
Paul Levesque.
Yes. So all season long after that, he is trying to get back with Zoe, and all season long, Zoe is doing what girls do best, saying no. And finally, we get to the very end, and he is going to give her a bottle of champagne and say his goodbye. She's going to go to France with Prince Surrender Monkey, and Prince Surrender Monkey, like all good French boys, tries to get her high on ecstasy, and it turns out it's GHB. And oh, by the way, there's also kidnappers lurking about.
Yep.
And so they do. And so the episode ends with Zoe being kidnapped, and they don't know if it's a response to the Kundun thing or if it's good old-fashioned American Oklahoma terrorists. We don't know. Could be either one. There are arguments being made, plans being made, and we don't, and we might attack Kundun, and it turns out it's fucking Jesse and his friends from West Virginia. We don't know. And boy, would that be the wrong response if it is. So that's part of it. But the thing I want to talk about, and the thing that I think I was more focused on, and we can touch on the side thing with Toby and the twins, because I really do want to talk about that conversation with him and the wife and
man,
in the house. But because Bartlet is beside himself, as any good father would be if his daughter was kidnapped, he decides to invoke the 25th Amendment. He's going to step down as president. By this point, Vice President Hoynes, who has been having an affair with, I guess, I can't remember who.
A socialite.
Yeah, with a socialite, Marilyn Monroe, for all I know. So he's had to step down. This fucking, it's like sometimes they give stuff that Clinton did to another character because they can't give it to Bartlet, or they can't give everything to Bartlet. So they have Hoynes doing, the sex scandal thing because now he's Bill Clinton. And we don't have a vice president is the point. So it goes to the Speaker of the House. And oh, by the way, we just had an election where the Republicans won Congress. Guess who the Speaker of the House is? Big old fat fucking Texican, cigar smoking, ribs eating, Arab bombing Texan. Comes in with 2 big guns that he pulls out of his pants.
Is he Texan?
Huh?
Is he Texan?
I don't know what accent Dan from Roseanne was doing.
Yeah.
but he might
Roseanne.
but he might as well have been. I assumed he was from Texas with the way he was talking. But anyway,
Andrew's going to have us an answer here in a few.
I'm gonna have to look this up. You guys keep going.
I looked it up earlier. I couldn't find shit on him. But he comes into the White House like Darth Vader in Rogue One. It's just, you know?
Every 10 seconds is a shot of just feet walking.
Oh, you know what?
You
We
can
have to show
see-
this one out.
You could see a nest of eggs fall from CJ's vagina when she saw him.
Come
It was terrible. Yes, Andrew.
I was about to say we have to shout out to our many members of the network for this one. Glen Allen Walken is from Missouri.
I was close.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, yeah, so he walks in and they're all like shitting their pants and having kittens and like, oh God, the enemy is here. And he just looks at him and goes, you can relax, everybody. I'm on your side. And then we fast forward a little bit to when he's being sworn in, and Bartlet says something, and he looks at him, and he ignites his red lightsaber, and he says, "You are relieved, President Bartlet."
I mean, that whole introduction to him. I mean, first off, I was marking out because it's freaking John Goodman.
Yeah, I couldn't remember his fucking name. That's why I said Dan from Roseanne.
Yep.
John Goodman walking in there, and I was like, yes, all right, this is going to be great. But yeah, his whole interaction, like I think he asks about Abby and how she's doing, but I think those are the only things that are discussed in regards to the whole fact that hey,
before he says you're relieved, he's like, there is someone in charge. Like, oh God.
Yeah,
I think that came from his crotch.
The only thing he doesn't hardly say anything about Zoe at all. He just comes, and I mean that's the whole reason this is going down. You would think you would think that he would have had the common courtesy to say like, look, hey, I understand. No, the first thing he does is he comes in there and he gives Leo a hard time for not fucking shooting down a plane.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, how's Abby doing? And then I mean it was. I have fears. I'll just put it that way. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're giving this guy power. What is going to happen? I'm sure that's what's going through everybody's mind here in the office. They're like, we're about to give this over. It's mentioned. We're about to give this over to your political enemy.
Right.
So, I mean,
again, every character has an analog from real life. I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be, the Sith version of Newt Gingrich.
You're going to see him next season.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was going to say this. Okay. All right, then.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, would you disagree with that characterization, the way that they wrote him? First of all, they got a big fat guy to play him. If that's not Newt Gingrich, I'm not Newt,
No. They introduce a new speaker who kind of takes that hard bargaining role.
Oh, okay. That's what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Got you.
Yeah. So we get to see Walken's a fun character. He's really good in season 5. He's around for a few episodes. But then they introduce.
I'm sure, according to Aaron Sorkin, every fucking Republican's a big fat angry guy.
Again, give him time. He's a pretty charming character, actually. Once you get a few episodes with him.
Oh, anyway. Good.
Yeah.
All right.
They hated Newt Gingrich. They hated him so much. Anyway, your thoughts on the Zoe stuff or the transfer of power?
Okay, holy shit, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about in there. Maybe we'll back it up one. I got to talk about the whole Hoynes thing. I'm not going to lie. Life on Mars is probably one of my absolute favorite episodes of this series because it's kind of outside the whole normal West Wing structure because it's literally just drop in this Matthew Perry character who's really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
Set him on this completely unknown.
I have to say, I've enjoyed him and Lily Tomlin as known actors that were dropped into this. Like I was saying it before, like I miss Ainsley, but you gave me Matthew Perry, and Matthew Perry is better than we thought he is, having been on Friends.
You know, it's kind of a funny thing. I think we said this when we talked about Band of Brothers. I never liked Friends all that much, but holy shit, like between David Schwimmer every time I see him outside of Friends and like Matthew Perry, God rest his soul, whenever he was on, was pretty fantastic.
That whole cast can act. I just watched Jesse, I did a thing where I watched a show with a girl. Can you believe it? I
Whoa.
watched the whole show with a girl. I binged the show like a married man, Jesse. I don't.
Wow.
Yeah, me and the girlfriend watched No Good Deed on Netflix. I think it was like 8 half-an-hour episodes. It started. The reason why I brought that up is Lisa Kudrow's in it,
Okay.
as is Ray Romano, and Lisa Kudrow, also great actress. You wouldn't know it from Friends, but great actress.
So, okay, we're talking about the Republican lawyer Matthew Perry's playing
Yep.
here. To get you back on track there, watching him just kind of get dropped in and then start putting pieces together, and the fact that it's a Republican lawyer that ends up resulting in the vice president having
There's no way to write
resigned.
that. If they did it with a Democrat, it would have looked too pointy,
Well,
too personal.
Then I even love that episode where it's like they introduce him, and it's that whole conversation where they're having the interview between Donna and Josh. And it's like, it's a really good player, but he's sitting in the other team's dressing room. And then he defends him by saying, wait a second, but Ainsley Hayes looked like Ainsley Hayes. And Donna's like, he's Ainsley Hayes to me.
Yeah.
Yes, girls like hot people too, you know.
And my brain triggered on something regarding Matthew Perry, so I just have to bring this one up. So he was born in Massachusetts, but he actually spent a significant time in Canada. His mother was actually press secretary to former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. And
Nice.
apparently at one point, Matthew Perry beat up also former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau when they were kids.
That's
Cool.
funny.
That's fantastic. Anyway,
So
going back to your
Life
initial
on
point.
Mars, great episode. It kind of comes out of the blue and hits you really effectively. And then again, when we talk about like all-time favorite moments of this show, the last 10 minutes of commencement is just a fucking art house piece when it comes to tension.
Yeah.
They have the lighting, they have the cross-cutting, they have the massive attack song.
That noise, that line from Hoynes of, they have now implied that he has had an inappropriate sexual relationship outside of his marriage as the vice president, and he goes like, "I'm going to hit you in the mouth. You're also not wrong."
Yeah, when they decide to use music, what was that episode that they used like that one? Oh my goodness, I think it was episode 2 or season 2.
The
go ahead.
one?
Yeah, what was it?
Someone's going to the hospital. Someone's going to jail in New York.
There you go. Yeah. That the way that they used that song was great. And then at the end of that, at the end of commencement, I think it was.
Yes.
I was like, man, they're doing something different with this music, and we're cutting in just like you were saying, and watching all of this unfold, and it really added to what was going on. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Continue.
Oh no, I was gonna say, like not even within the direct issue of the scene of Zoe's abduction, but every scene that was cross-cutting in had tension associated with it. Like the conversation between Donna and now I can't remember her name.
Amy.
Yeah, Donna and Amy, that had a tension to it. There was tension between everything else, kind of all building up to this point where it's like she goes missing, and it's not even like it ends with a lot of action, but it ends with this gut punch. And then you kind of go into the next scene of them being told, and then you're rolling into 25. And in terms of like, we talk about this show because of dialogue, but it's like, that was a great piece of just visual film craft.
Yeah.
I'll agree.
And Taye Diggs was great in it too.
I thought that's who that was. I was trying to remember. Like,
I'm pretty sure that's Taye Diggs.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. If there's nothing else about that element of 25, just before I kind of give last licks in Jesse's list, which is a name of my new band. We haven't touched on this. I mean, it's 23 episodes of television. I'm boiling it down to an hour and a half conversation ish. So there's a lot of stuff we don't talk about. As stuff comes up in our conversation, if people talk about it, great. But there's a lot of meat left on the table. But I will not end this show without talking about the conversation between Toby and his ex-wife, who's carrying his twin children. And the whole season, he is trying to get her to remarry him, and she's like, "No, thank you. I've been on that ride. I know how it ends." And then he does something romantic. He does something wild. He does something chivalrous. He buys her a house, the house she's always wanted, her dream house. And she says to him, "I wish you hadn't. I still don't want to marry you." And there's a line in this, and I'm bringing it up it rang out to me as one of the human moments of this show. It's the only non-political moment of the show that truly resonated with me because I've been both Toby and I've been his wife. There's a bit of dialogue exchange where she says, "You're just so sad all the time."
Yep.
That's
You're
what
just
that's
you're
one of
sad.
my notes, man.
You're sad and you're angry, and I just don't. And you're going to bleed that onto our children, and I don't want that. And he says, "God forbid I should raise our children to be strong enough to handle how life's going to treat them." I have said that. I have been known to be a bit harsh on my kids, but that's because I don't want them to grow up to be the kind of person who you have to strap into a restraint chair because they don't know how to follow instructions. Or they have to be on, an elephant dose of fucking Xanax because they have social anxiety and are just a baby. So I am trying to raise functional adults. It's hard. It's so hard.
Yep.
Oh God, I need a break. So anyway, I've been Toby, but I've also been, his wife with relationship to a previous marriage. Of just like, you're so sad all the time. Why are you so sad? Why are you so angry? What is so bad about our life in this world that you can't keep it together from one day to the next? And not wanting to live with that person anymore. I mean, I talk endlessly about stuff that happened in the last couple of years of my life, but you're lying to say that there were times where I didn't want it to be over before it was because I got tired of being around somebody who was miserable constantly, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I saw both sides of that conversation, and it hit me really, really hard, and I wanted to talk about it. It's a really well-acted scene, and I'll be curious to see what happens with him and her and their kids as the show unfolds in later seasons. But I take Toby's side more often than not, because I also know what it's like to be really, really smart and be misunderstood by everybody. I know what it's like to be really, really smart and being disliked because you're smart, hence the conversation from an hour ago. It's something I'm going through with my son. He's really, really smart too, and misunderstood and kind of hated at times. That's the world we live in, unfortunately. And I empathize, maybe overly empathize with Toby. Also, I can see why everyone wants to hit him. I can see both sides. Anyway, your thoughts, Jesse?
Yeah, wow. Boy, that episode, that moment really was so rough. And I think as far as character arcs go throughout this season, Toby's was the one that I was most interested in. Toby's always kind of been this enigma to me. Like he's the smartest. He's definitely one of the smartest guys. And he's very reserved, it seemed like. And what I'm starting to realize now, as we peel back the onion here in season 4, he's got a sadness to him. He definitely seething anger. I could see that too. Like it's just he's trying to keep it in check, and the way that he does it, he's just kind of quiet. And then when you see him get riled up, help me out here. It's Schiff? What's his first name? Robert?
Richard Schiff.
Richard Schiff. Just the acting is phenomenal because I mean, you could see that he wants to just unload, but he doesn't. He laughs.
I'm not a genius, but do you know how hard it is to run as fast as the slowest person?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. So, when you see that his wife, his ex-wife, right? They are divorced because he continues to ask him.
They're divorced. Yes,
they are divorced. So when she finally this has been bubbling for so long in their relationship, and he finally presents her with something like, look, and of course throughout this season he's like, why don't you marry me? And when she says no again for the final time, he was like, I thought you was being cute all those times you continue to say no. And then he's like, why don't you tell me what's going on? And then when she lets him have it, it is very heartbreaking because you watch this man have to reflect upon himself and really look at like, okay, there's a moment where after she says that, like, doesn't he say something like, have my friends told you that too? Like that, or something along those. Like he's worried about what his friends are thinking of him as well. He is realizing that is an element of him that he's probably been aware of, but he didn't realize how much of an effect it had on other people.
Yeah.
And that's what's really heartbreaking.
Facts can confirm.
Yeah. When you start to see that your own personal struggles are affecting other people, And this is trauma that he's had. You know, we get to see a few episodes or an episode with his dad where his dad comes back. We get the flashback to what his dad was into. His dad was
honestly thought I was in a different show.
Yeah,
I kept getting it like this is I am Boardwalk Empire. What the fuck
I love
is
it.
right,
Yeah,
right.
good stuff.
And him kind of sort of not, I wouldn't say reconciling, but he has that moment with his dad at the end where his dad's crying watching the Whiffin Poofs sing.
The Whiffin Poofs.
Real band, by the way.
Just
That is
crazy.
a real group.
But anyway, yeah, it is rough. And not only that, but the next episode, I think it's the final episode after the kids are born. Like, we have a whirlwind here. We got some craziness going on because he has to go through that. And then Andy walks out the door because she is upset. I got it. My ankle's hurt. And then her water breaks outside the freaking house after she's like, no, I don't want the house. And then he has to deal with his own feelings about his children and what he was just told by his ex-wife. And I mean, it is a powerful piece of writing. It is a powerful piece that really, my notes here, I wrote you guys, I don't bother you guys with the text very often unless something big hits me. And that right there was so impactful. I had to say, man, Toby, come on. Yeah. This is tough. Poor Toby.
It's not easy to be told by somebody you love that they don't love you. And actually think elements of your personality are problematic.
Yeah.
And then to Richard Schiff's credit, he's got to turn around and he's got to go to Babies Come with Hats. Like, right. Oh my God, another scene where it's just like, that is just killer acting right there. Like, shit. Yeah. Richard Schiff is so goddamn good.
Yes,
yeah. He can go from that moment of absolute gutted to that moment of absolute tenderness and then also epiphany at the same time.
Yeah, and then he has to run to the White House and tell Bartlet to step down after, meanwhile he already has.
And where was it? It was in one of these episodes where he had a conversation with somebody where he's like, I'm worried I'm not going to love my kid. It was with Leo. He had
it was worried
I'm not going to love my kids.
The capacity. This is what you were talking about earlier.
Do so. And it's like,
right.
Man, we all have we're all dads. We probably all had that doubt at one point. Like,
I
voiced so relatable.
I voiced that to my wife when I found out that she was pregnant with my first daughter, or with my first kid, my daughter. I told her, I said, it was so
because you're a big time misogynist.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And here I have to deal with that. Thanks for pointing that out, Mark.
I said only sons, Mindy.
No, I had to deal with the fact that I personally was like, how am I going to love somebody else as much as I love my wife? Do I have that in me? And what a weird and stupid thing to even think.
Oh yeah.
But as a new father, I completely get it.
What about the reverse of that? A couple of weeks ago I did Waitress the movie. Waitress the musical with Shay, and there's a line in there. The villain Earl says to the lead, his wife, the waitress, and he's just like, "You better not love that baby more than me." And the kind of hot topic conversation of men not feeling as loved as their children by their significant other. Just throwing that out there. I love my kids. I just told my kids tonight, I was just like, it is the most important job that I have, and the one I take the most seriously is being your father. It is not easy.
Oh God, no.
I sat at the table with them today and be like, I'm cooking way too much around here. You guys aren't eating nearly enough. We need to change. What do you want from me? What do you want?
Wait. I know you're probably we've got different parenting styles, but I'm a pushover. So when it comes to dinner time, there's probably like 3 meals being fixed because one kid ain't gonna, one kid's not going to eat what me and the wife are going to eat. The other one will. Mongo will eat just about anything. But Colton, it's either pizza, chicken nuggets, whatever. So there's like 3 dinners going on here, and trust me.
We had to negotiate nights that a free for all night because I was like, I cannot continue to cook meals you won't eat. And I'm not going to eat anything else.
I was right there with you. Like, Colton, sit down here and have some macaroni and cheese. And he wouldn't have anything. I'm like, okay, something's got to change. Well, what changed was like, what do you like to eat? So I can at least feed you and you get some nourishment.
Yeah, we said I would cook 3 nights, and the other nights you guys can just eat whatever the fuck's in the house and leave me alone.
Yeah.
Here's the cereal.
Yeah.
We'll hit that night where it's like, like normally Thursdays, but tonight we got pizza because it's basically a long weekend. But it's like you get that night where it's like, okay, we have like 3 half leftovers left in the fridge. Everyone go to town. If someone wants eggs, go for it. If someone wants Cheerios, go for it. Because it's what you got to survive.
Right.
Your thoughts on do me a favor, Andrew, just because I got to wrap up here. Your thoughts on Toby and his wife and the kids and all of that, and then kind of go into your burning desires.
Definitely. So yeah, I think I'm online with you guys. I think those last couple scenes between Toby and Andy, and then Toby and the kids are absolute dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing I keep on, and this kind of hangs for me a little bit, is that I'm not entirely, pardon me, clear when Andy announces that she's pregnant, what the status of that relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have they had a reconciliation?
It kind of comes out of nowhere.
Sorry?
It comes out of nowhere.
It comes out of nowhere, but there's also a reference to they were trying to do some kind of fertility treatment at some point. Yeah. So did she continue with it? And after they divorced and it finally took? Like, it's not clear where their starting point is. So I think that's always kind of, or the more I've rewatched the show, it's like that doesn't quite hang together entirely. Or it's a piece that is
very complicated.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, otherwise, I think that's really good. Let me just pull my notes here for other burning desires. Most of these are random things. I had to rewatch it because I never rewatched this episode. The Long Goodbye, great episode, hard watch.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
I've had some family members who had Alzheimer's, and I've only had a limited exposure, but that is a gutting episode.
So I haven't had to go through that, but Robert has, and Robert's talked about it, and I did the Father with him during the first triple feature where we dealt with Oscar stuff. And he talked at length about that sort of thing, and I, on behalf of Robert, empathized a lot for him watching that episode, and it was a gut punch for me on behalf of Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, other things I have on here, probably some more fun stuff at this point. Alicia will make fun of me for this. If we are ever watching through any parts of the West Wing, even if it's like 11 o'clock and we got to go to bed and Game On comes on, I will watch that cold open without fail. The one where he like feigns the crisis of confidence and Toby loses his shit.
Oh, yeah.
I will watch that I did it last night.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, Andrew, you're going to change the channel? Oh, wait, never mind. You're just watching the cold open.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the funniest goddamn things I have ever watched, and it never loses it. We talked about that already. The Star Trek Dave moment is great. Privateers, Marion Coatsworth, hey! Really, that's probably the other main thing to probably really briefly touch on, just in terms on where the show is going, is that basically 25 and commencement was the end of Aaron Sorkin on the West Wing. He'd basically just had enough. So
he was in a fight with the executives at NBC.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, they said play jazz, and he said I'm playing classical, and they said go fuck yourself, and he said gladly. That was kind of
did they want more action or something, or what was their
the shows were wildly over budget was one problem.
Yeah.
Okay. All right then.
And I mean, at this point, so he had written commencement in 25, and then they hadn't broken anything else. So he was walking away from that show absolutely cold.
Oh boy.
So there wasn't already a plan to say this is how we're going to resolve this Zoe story.
Right. There's
hey, here you go. Here's the Force Awakens. Lots of luck, Rian Johnson.
That's actually a decent analogy. So we're kind of in this weird reality now where, of course, we saw what happened with the West Wing in season 5 when we go there.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, since then, I've actually found out there's this website Masterclass where people do like online courses. Aaron Sorkin gives one of those on screenwriting, and apparently during that he breaks his own version of
how that resolves
the first couple of episodes of West Wing season 5.
Fucking reminds me of Game of Thrones.
Fucking write a comic. I mean, let's get him in comic form. I'll read it.
But anyway, it's interesting. I'm going to be really interested to see how you guys react to season 5. I think, again, I go back to Mr. Brodigan's comment. 5 is probably the weakest of any of the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
There's still some good stuff in there, but it definitely is trying to find its feet again. Once we hit 6, it picks back up again in some new directions, but I'll just kind of leave it at that, and then we'll talk lists and any other burning desires.
That's an interesting point about how he left, because I was going to actually ask about, like, does he write the next 2 episodes to resolve what happened? There is there's a thing called the Commandy Challenge. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Commandy from DC Comics. He's kind of like, I'm pretty sure it's DC. But anyway, creative teams would get onto the book and write an issue and like do something crazy with the character. And the purpose of the Commandy Challenge was to just do whatever you wanted with the character for that one issue, leave and have another creative team come on and try to pick up and figure out how to pick up the
done
pieces.
something ridiculous, like make the Punisher the fucking, the Galactus' herald.
Well, that sounds good. But yeah, that's what I was thinking of. I was like, oh man, this is I wonder if this is a situation where it's kind of like a Commandy Challenge where somebody else has got to come in and resolve this. So yeah,
imagine they bring on like a head writer or a showrunner for season 5 who doesn't know what happened. And so Martin Sheen is gone. He's off the show, and as is Rob Lowe. What?
Wait a second. Oh no.
All right, your favorite parts or your list or whatever.
You ready for the list?
We're ready for the list.
Some of this stuff, you guys, we covered a good bit that was on this, but I'll run them down here. So we get 20 Hours in America, part 1 and 2. And my favorite interaction in the first episode is when they realize that time zones are a thing. And I think it's Toby that gets so pissed. He's like, do people just change their watches when they have to commute? Like, he doesn't understand that that's a thing.
Okay, we need to stop for a second. Does this actually happen in the U.S.?
Yes.
Like, is there differences between counties?
There has to be. I mean,
dude,
you
I
cross
think
over.
I think part of a state's on a time zone change.
Yeah.
Like, okay, part of the state making, I guess, depending on the state, though, but it's like all of our stuff we engineer around the provincial border. So at least if you're going between like Alberta and BC, you change.
Let me tell you what the prevailing wisdom of anything designed by the United States is. Fuck your couch.
Yeah. I just showed my daughter that episode a few days ago of the show. I was like, hey, when you go back to school, make sure to say exactly this. Fuck your couch. Episode 2.
We're not talking about JD Vance.
Oh, representing.
Hang on.
So, Loki.
What?
What the fuck?
every single audio bit we got there.
Yeah.
All right. Episode 2, when they're trying, it's Donna, Josh, and Toby trying to get back. They get on the train, and the train goes the opposite direction they need to go, which is fantastic.
Let me tell you how living in New York City, I've done that once or twice. Your life is over.
A few times.
I have gotten on like not the wrong Long Island Railroad, because that I really would have killed myself.
Very quick note, 20 Hours in America. Of course, starting the episode, you get future multiple-time Academy Award nominee Amy Adams.
Yes, that was a note. Amy
and then
Adams
you get the long-haired kid who's driving them down is John Gallagher Jr., and we will be seeing him in another series soon.
Oh, all right then.
Yes.
And the fun part is they didn't remember him.
Oh wow. Episode 3 is where they're dealing with there was a bombing, I think, some kids and this is Bartlet has to go out and talk about this. One of the things that he hangs his hat on during that speech is they weren't born wanting to do this, which is, I think, very, what a great line.
Yeah.
The Red Mass is where we decide that we're not going to do 2 debates. We're going to do 1. And boy, does Toby lose his shit when that happens. Debate. Toby gets mad. Debate camp, episode 5. The NSA comes to talk to Josh about Donna, which is hilarious because Donna puts this young kid up to make it look like he's the NSA. And so Josh gets punked. This is where everybody starts getting pranked shortly thereafter, where Toby gets pranked. Game on when Abby walks in. I should say Abby and Bartlet are walking out, getting ready to go to the debate, and she grabs the scissors and cuts his tie. That was great.
That is such a well-written scene in terms of what their relationship is, where they know exactly how to rev each other up.
Oh yeah.
His wife would do.
Election night. This was He won. Bartlett won New Hampshire.
Yep.
Yes.
So what a great point.
Can I tell you, my dad's thing with Al Gore was he lost his own fucking state. He didn't deserve to be president.
That's a qualifier.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you cannot. Nope. Yeah. I already said this earlier. Episode 8, process stories. The president just wants laid. Can you please leave him alone? He's ready to celebrate.
There's a special garment involved.
Swiss diplomacy was a great episode where they had the Ayatollah's son had a heart condition, and the only person that could do it was somebody who was tortured and actually came to America. Tortured from he wasn't. His dad. Yeah, his dad was tortured and came to America to escape that, and ends up being the only person that could save him. And then by the very end of the episode, the doctor scrubbing up to save this kid's life, which is great. Arctic Radar, the one line where, hey, they're talking about Sam's campaign or the guy that ran the campaign. He's like, yeah, this campaign had fatalities. That's pretty crazy campaign. Episode 11, Danny is back. I made sure to highlight that. Love seeing Danny back. Guns Not Butter. My daughter is dating a man that's better looking than my wife. Episode 13, The Long Goodbye. I mean, when I think the moment that really hit is right at the very end when CJ, who, this is a very impactful episode. Again, we've already sort of talked about it, but when she tells her dad that she will see him, she will see him next week, and he kind of calls her on it, and she has to realize, like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to come back. This guy, she has to pretty much eat the fact that, he's going to continue to get worse and worse. And, at some point she will have to make that decision. But even though she said that, she's not doing that, even though she said it, which is kind of sad. And she realizes that, yeah, you're right. I'm not going, I probably won't see you. The rubber ball. You mentioned how the rubber ball will become a thing, and sure enough, did it ever this season. As we get into the 14 and 15, where Will Bailey breaks a freaking window with it. And then the second time he breaks the window without it by just putting his hand on it and pushing the window down. Good stuff there. Toby and Charlie get arrested for assault.
Dude, Bartlet's line about every time we come to California, we are the Clampets. I don't know if that joke has aged well at all. I don't know if people still remember.
They don't need to count. Yeah, right.
But that I laughed hard at that line.
Yep. Yeah. And following that, in the next episode, a Jewish guy won a bar fight. It's news everywhere. In that same episode, I wrote down Will is the Chat GPT as he takes the interns things and makes it sound great. Like the intern keeps feeding him stuff, and he's like, oh, okay, I got this. Episode 18, a glacier melted in Alaska, and boy, they have a hard time wrapping their heads around that one. A glacier melted? Hey, we should be talking about the fact that a glacier melted. Angel maintenance, right at the very end, when they've been up in the air, circling, and then they get the landing gear down, and they got another delay. They've got to wait. That was a great ending. Episode 20, Ainsley's gone. Ainsley is gone. Here's Matthew Perry. And that's when CJ's trying to get the egg to stand on its end because it's the equinox, and then everybody leaves, and she finally gets it to happen. Life on Mars. Okay. All right. As great as that episode is, my favorite part of that whole episode is the young intern explaining to Will, they're trying to come up with a campaign ad, and she's like, a soccer mom hauling Saudis. They're super comfortable though.
No. He made the joke. It's like, wait a second, this just turned into an ad for the Klan.
And yeah, I mean, episode 22, we talked a lot about Andy and Toby. Toby being, is called out for being a pessimist. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. But the other big moment, we were talking about Donna and Amy and their conversation. Dude, it's been 4 seasons, and Amy asked Donna, "Are you in love with Josh?" And that was it. Nothing else was said.
We got to go back to Josh, though. I can't remember. There was something about, like, he did something so that Donna would stay, and then they get Donna on a flight anyway, and you could such a subtle acting. Yeah, it was a bit with Christian Slater. Another great cameo in the show.
Right.
Where like he there's something going on where he's trying to get Donna to stay, but Donna ends up on a plane going home anyway. And there's a subtle bit of acting in the guy playing Josh's eyes, where he's obviously like heartbroken about it, but he can't confront that part of himself just yet.
You've got to get Josh. You don't get Josh.
Oh my God! Speaking of subtle acting, Mary Louise Parker wanting to, whose heart's breaking and wants to kill Donna all in one moment.
Yeah.
I want to ask real quick, just because I've been wanting to ask you. You watched all of Weeds, didn't you?
I did.
And didn't you do a podcast with Comer on it?
I did.
How was she in Weeds? I mean, was she really good?
Great.
Okay,
yeah, she's awesome. I wasn't as familiar with her when we did Weeds. She's a great actress.
Okay, all right. And then finally,
I feel bad we didn't talk about her as much in the. Well, I wasn't around to talk about her during season 3, but I mean, she is kind of a really fascinating character and a lot of great mannerisms in her delivery.
Her conversation with again going back to the you get to watch the Victor dance bit, and Abby says to her, he's like, "Don't you just want to hit Josh when he does stuff like that? When he says stuff like that?" She goes, "No, I want to jump his bones." My kind of gal.
But I mean, that's why they're kind of perfect for each other, because they're these two perfect political animals.
Yeah. And then finally, I think the first moments of episode 25, when Leo is going to go and try to tell the president what happened. President has no idea. Leo's, I think it's at the beginning of this episode while Leo's walking, and then of course he's running. Watching Leo run, it's serious. Obviously, he shows up. That might have been at the end of the previous episode, but either way, he shows up as they're, the adults are having the party celebrating Zoe's graduation, and Bartlet is looking through these photographs, and he has one, and I think he just turns around to Abby and as Leo's in the background, and he's telling her, this is the one. It's this real young childhood picture of Zoe, and then he gets told what happened. And I mean, my goodness, just going through that, everything that happened, and him deciding to take, activate the 25th and take himself out of power. I agree that I don't know if we even said it wasn't the right move. And I think it is. I thought it was like that's the only thing you really can do, because you are pretty much incapacitated and are going to be influenced by what's going on with your daughter. Right. But anyway, I think that moment where he finds out, he drops the pictures, the drink falls right after that. You could just tell that.
After saying my perfect world is one where my daughter lives at home forever.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and they call it back more directly in a line in I can't remember if it was in season 4 or season 5, but there's an argument in season 1 between Bartlet and Zoe where he said, "My worst case scenario is a bunch of guys having you tied up with a knife to your throat." And basically that's exactly where they wrote them to. Maybe one other quick thing I'll mention, just a very quick kind of blink and you'll miss a cameo, but I think during the scene where Toby's talking to the babies, there's the TV on in the corner, and they have this quick shot of a young Bartlet playing with a young Zoe.
Yeah.
Emilio Estevez.
Oh, really?
Yep.
All right, guys. This was fun. This is almost 2 hours of a conversation that really didn't stop, and we got a lot in. We could have talked for another 2 hours, but if I do that, someone will shoot me. So, and you'll have lives to get back to as well. So with that said, that's our review of The West Wing Season 4. We will be back next month. Hopefully Dorian will be back with us on May 15th. That'll be, again, a Thursday night. As for this week, Sunday, Jesse and I got together. We talked 3 Joker books: Joker Kill a Smile, Joker Presents a Puzzle Box, and the Joker Saga. Monday, Dorian was on that show. We, myself and him and Robert talked Warfare on Damn You Hollywood. It's a busy week this week. Wednesday, Alexis hosted the show, and I came on as a panel member to discuss The Bear Season 3, and now we're caught up. That's it for this week. Next week, we will be reviewing all of WrestleMania weekend on Monday. That's labeled as a Whiskey Rebellion instead of Damn You Hollywood. Wednesday, At 11 o'clock, a late show, myself and Harry Broadhurst will be discussing the other stuff that happened WrestleMania weekend. We're looking at the Game Changer Wrestling events, collectively known, oddly enough, as The Collective. So we'll be doing that. Thursday, it's all romance all the time here in the month of April. I will be having Dorian, Matt Kettner, and Mick Wanamaker on Triple Feature. We will be talking Bridget Jones, mad about the boy, Jesse Slaughter, simply mad about the boy. The Life List and La Dolce Vita, because I want to do more stuff besides nerd stuff. So, talking 3 streaming romance movies. Fantastic. I think that's it. And then, Jesse, you'll also be on a catch-up streaming show. A week from this Sunday, we will be talking Cleaner, which is Daisy Ridley in a Die Hard-esque movie that's apparently terrible. Alarum, which has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, starring Sylvester Stallone, and this nonsense they're calling G20, an Amazon Prime action movie starring Viola Davis. Jesse, I want you to know you are the only one. You are the only one I can talk about this movie with, because you are the only one that'll watch this movie and not want to stab me right in the solar plexus.
I'm looking at the poster for this, and it's Viola Davis in a red evening gown and an MP7.
So she plays the president, and the nerds are calling her Michelle Obama.
Okay.
So some people are like Kamala Harris. Like, no, she's not Kamala Harris. This is Michelle Obama wish fulfillment, where Michelle Obama plays Bruce Willis's character from Die Hard, but she's the president.
I feel like this is almost like an extension of like the whole, was it the SNL joke where it's The Rock Obama?
Yeah, something along those lines. Since you have the clamshell, go ahead and tell us where you roll around in pajamas.
All right, I'm glad you didn't go to your normal joke, Mark. I do train at Havoc and Esteem Martial Arts here in Calgary. You can find them on all your major social media platforms. Also, be back here probably in a month to talk about West Wing season 5 with these fine gentlemen again. And because I'm out here to plug just random stuff out there, definitely go give the piece by Romeo Dallaire a read. Also, I believe it was Positive America just did a great conversation with Michael Lewis on a lot of elements on government and how it actually works. Sorry?
I said, woo, Michael Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. We're big fans of Aaron Sorkin and Michael Lewis. So obviously, yeah, we're going to have to talk about a couple of these at some point. Nerds. All right, speaking of nerds, Jesse. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Andrew. Always a pleasure. Jesse, take me home, baby doll.
Yeah, take a look at the Source Material Comics podcast. Listen, if you could check out the YouTube, you should be able to catch any episode that ever aired on the W2M network as well. This past Monday. Is the Flintstones on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network?
It was during the Blog Talk Radio years, yes.
You have a YouTube though, don't you? That
never got translated. No, that's still dead in the archive.
Unbelievable. Are you trying to lobby for some kind of syndicated source material for the Flintstones or something?
Please finish your blog, sir. I have a headache.
This past Monday, myself and Mark Radulich, we got together. We discussed that final volume, She-Hulk of 2005. Actually, not the final. It's the first 5 issues of that final run. I think this is Dan Slott again, right? Dan Slott again coming together and talking about She-Hulk. And this was where the TVA got involved, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
Yeah, so if you get a chance, check that out. Next Monday on Unspoken Issues, you can hear me and Chris Armstrong get together and talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, the comic book adaptation. So we take a look. We're doing something. What is it you call there? The comic strip, Mark?
That is correct.
I took that idea and I said, all right, well, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm just going to look at the adaptation of the movie. So I reversed it. I'm looking at the movie and the comic book adaptation of the movie. And we get together, we talk about, what we get to see here. And it's very strange because you actually get to see Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird art in the adaptation of the first movie. Then we get to the second movie, which we're going to be recording this coming Sunday. It's Archie time. Oh boy. Talk about bright colors and Archie comics. That was something else. But this was Mirage Publishing, the first the first adaptation, which was really cool. So we had a lot of fun. There were some deleted scenes in the comic book adaptation that weren't in the movie. So I learned actually some stuff there. But anyway, I think that's it. You can also check me and Evan Bevan's out about once a month, getting together and have about 4 or 5 episodes on Marvel Snap. That's called the Snap Material Podcast. So that's all I got. Mark Radlich, you ready to go to bed?
Sort of. All right, folks. For
Sort of.
for Andrew Graham, for Jesse Stahocher, I have to go check on a guest that got here about an hour ago. Be well, be safe, and behave.